Great to see everybody. Thanks for showing up, which is half the battle, we're told. So yes, last week we talked about absolute asset gifts. We thought, and many of you are well versed in this, but thought I would cover absolute cash gifts, which are simple, but then we can certainly open the floor to any more complicated questions or anything that you'd like to talk about eState. So I'm just going to share my screen and we'll get going. So I'll just might as well concentrate on this. So like any other gifts that you make, we go scenario by scenario and we treat each scenario independently. And so we'll start with the surviving spouse scenario. So the question here is, if your spouse survives you, do you want to make a cash gift to anyone? And so you'll go through that. In most cases, that might be no, but let's take some cases where there are gifts. So surviving spouse, let's say the client says, yes, I want to make a cash gift to my kids. Okay. And maybe I'll just go with the Simpsons, as I often do, and start with that. So let's just talk about that kind of planning. So here we are in the surviving spouse. Cash gifts, as everyone knows, likely are dealt with in initial gifts. So these are legacies that are off the top. So you just click on the cash gift, you pick your beneficiary. So you can pick an individual or more than one individual, a group of people. You can pick a class of people, or you can pick a charity. So for example, we'll pick, I want Abraham to get money. If my spouse survives me, I still want him to get $1,000. And that's a very simple gift, right? And I'll just, might as well, as we go, I'll just show you the legacies appearing on the right. So here's that very simple legacy gift. $1,000 to my father if he's alive, etc. Just so you know, I don't know how many, and please feel free to unmic or in the chat, use add for his own use absolutely after absolute legacies. We're building it so that you can include it or exclude it. But if anybody, I don't know, how many people use add that always or like that, I guess, because you add it if you use eState. Anybody not like it? Wouldn't want it? So anyway, we're building that as an option. So that's your very simple gift. So then we'll just try another simple gift, and we can do it to a bunch of people. And when we do it to a bunch of people, let's give everybody, so we have a few options here. So we pick a bunch of beneficiaries. We're talking only about absolute gifts. The priority of payment is if you have a bunch of legacies and you want to prioritize in the event of abatement where there's not enough money to pay all of them, do you want a certain cash gifts to be paid in priority? Most cases, we don't change that. We let them all be paid equally. And if there's not enough money, they'll all be reduced ratably. But in any event, that's what priority of payment is. It defaults to payment of one, which would be everybody would be at the same level. So then we have the amount. We have the ability to index cash gifts. So it's $2,000 on today's date, but when you die in 20 years, it's going to be whatever the indexed value of that would be. So I'm just going to show you that as an example. Now, because we have more than one person, so this would apply to where we have a group of people, or we have a class of people, children, and it's more than one person, or we have a group of charities. We're going to have two options here. We're going to have the ability to divide that amount, 2,000, equally among all the beneficiaries, or give them each that amount. And in many cases, that's what we want, each to getting $2,000. Conditions you can put in, deducted from prior advances, which is like a hodgepodge clause, or you can add other conditions. You have to put those in manually. And then we think about the gift over. So if someone's not alive, maybe we want it to go to their children or their issue. We can build that in and just put in beneficiaries issue. By default, it's going to fall into residue. If nobody was alive, of course, or if one of them wasn't alive and we didn't say anything else, that 2,000 wouldn't be paid because they're not alive. There's a condition that they have to be alive, of course. And then it would just automatically fall into the residue. So let's go and add that and just see what the preview looks like for a cash gift to multiple people. So we have $2,000 index. And I'll show you what that means because it's a defined term to each of, and then it lists all of them. Provided with, and here's the gift over, provided that if any of them are not alive, that a legacy amount shall be divided among the issue. So that's your gift over. Okay. And I see there's a question in the chat. I think it can be made in one place and not in others. Cash gifts, right? Fair enough. Typically, yeah, that's why we're going to probably delete it. So that's a good point. So those are cash gifts to other people. We can do a cash gift to a class, and you can, whoever it might be, children, grandchildren, etc. And I'll talk about charities in a second. Now, remember that we're going scenario by scenario. So when we take these instructions from the client that they want Abraham to get 1,000 and each of these people to get 2,000. So that's what's going to happen if the spouse survives. But if we talk to the spouse and we say, oh, no, I want these paid whether my spouse survives me, or I have children, or in any case, well, then I have to add them to the other scenarios, okay? And so you do that by clicking the three dots. I don't have to recreate these in each of the three scenarios. I can just copy them. And so what I do here is I click on the three dots, and you'll see this option, copy to. Well, if the client wants this same legacy to apply both in the surviving spouse and descendants only, then we can click that. If they also wanted to also apply in the no descendants, we'll copy it again and click it there. And now what you'll see is it's in the second scenario and it's in the third scenario. And what eState does is it figures things out. It groups legacies together. So if it's only payable in certain scenarios, then it's only going to put those in it'll identify which scenarios that payment gets made. In these cases, there were no gifts to anyone else. And so it sees empty scenarios. And I'll just maybe create a quick, just so you can see what would happen in other situations. So let's just run your typical kind of planning. So now we have legacies that are right now only payable in, let me just do this. Let me just do a nice, easy, absolute gift, just so we have a typical scenario. So in the surviving spouse scenario, we have two legacies, one to Abraham and one to each of Daniel, Billy, and Bart. But in the second scenario, we only have one. And in the third scenario, we only have one. So let me show you how eState sort of deals with that. It's going to group the legacy to Abraham because it's payable in all scenarios. There's no condition, okay? So that's why it just says, I direct my trustees as follows. He gets $1,000 regardless of who's alive. The gift to Daniel, Billy, and Bart was only if the spouse was alive. And so that's why there's a condition to that. So it's important when you're thinking through this that you go each scenario independently of the next, okay? If we copied this scenario and we said, well, we want it to be applied in both if the spouse is alive or the spouse is not alive and I have issue, well, that's a condition. That's not in the third scenario, right? That's only in 1 and 2. You'll see eState charts that out and says, okay, these are the conditions for each of those. So this is if my spouse is alive, or if I leave issue, then pay it this way. So again, if I put it in all three, it's going to get rid of that and group it in the one where it says pay it regardless. Okay. So because we have to deal with those possibilities. Yes, you don't have to manually do that. So that's all. And that way, you know that it's the same gift in all scenarios. Okay. So we have that very important clone button or copy button. Sorry. if you're doing a similar gift to a group of people and you want to just clone it, you can do that too. So what this would do would be, if I click clone, it would come up with the exact same gift and allow me to enter it. And then I can make whatever changes I want to this gift, and then it gets saved. So it saves, oh, there's $2,000 to a bunch of people with a gift over to issue each time. I just want to change the beneficiaries. Well, I can clone that gift and just change the beneficiaries. And so I can remove, and then just add whoever I wanted. I want Heather to get this, right? So that's how that will work. That's how the clone button works. Okay. So that's how we do it. So remember, again, repeat for the 10th time at least, that you got to go scenario by scenario. Okay. But again, it does group it. So those are those kinds of cash, absolute cash legacies. Charities. So let's say we were adding a charitable gift, right? So the client says to you, you know what, if everyone's gone, I want to leave some money to charity. Okay. So you'd go to that scenario, the no descendant scenario, and you'd hit add cash gift, and you'd click on the charities tab, and you type in the charity that the client tells you about. They want the children's help. Is there such a thing? Children's help? What's it? I thought there was some sort of charity called the Helpline or something, isn't it? Helpline? I don't know. Helpline Inc. No, that's not it. But this has all of the charities that CRA has. We get it right from the CRA website, and they're all properly named and they have information about it. So all you have to do is start typing, and it'll find out any charity with that name. Let's go easy. So they tell you, well, I want to, and clients do this all the time. They say, I want to leave money to Alzheimer's. Well, then you have to take them through, well, look at all the different Alzheimer's charities there are. Which ones do you want? Oh, yeah, I want this one. Well, how do I know that I want that one? Well, let's look. We click on the information button, and it'll tell you all the information about that. And it'll put in not only the name, but it'll put in the registration number. So I'm just going to show you how that would work. Okay. So let's pick this charity. Okay. The client says, yes, that's Hastings Prince Edward Alzheimer's Society. So we're going to go done, and we're going to put in the amount. And now when we run the document, it's going to show you, this is the gift in the third scenario. It's going to say, here we go, pay $1,000 to the Alzheimer's, and it puts the registration number in. Okay. So that's how we do that. You can't search by registration CRA number. We just didn't think that was that useful. So you can only search by name. Rarely does somebody say, I want this registration number. Maybe, I don't know. I've never tried. I say you can't do it. Let's try it. No, it's not going to work. Well, maybe let's hang on one second. Oh, you know what? It will find it by I don't know. That's only if the name has it. So it won't find it by registration number. So you can see there's some old charities that we had put in, because you can add manual charities. I'll just talk about that for a second. Let's say the client wants to leave money to an organization in the States or some other country, or an organization that's not a registered charity. Well, you can add new charity and put in the name, and if there's a registration number and any information you want to put about that, and then it's a new charity and it's added to your database. So it's not going to show up anywhere else, but it'll be in yours. And so if anybody ever uses it again, but there'll be a warning that says this isn't going to save tax, et cetera, because it's not a registered Canadian charity. So that's how we do cash legacies. And of course, when you show the client the graphic summary, then they're going to be able to see the charities right off the top. And so, yes, in the surviving spouse, this is what's going to happen, right? And then if your spouse is not alive, this is what's going to happen. And then if everyone's gone, this is what's going to happen. So really powerful. I'm actually in the midst of putting together, sometimes when a client says something about the software or the process or whatever, I record all my meetings, but I make a note of it. And so I'm putting together a little clip. I hope if you use eState Live with your client, I'm sure you'll get these kinds of reactions, but the clients just love that experience. I mean, that's what eState was built, was for a client-facing idea. Of course, you don't necessarily show them the drafting part, but to build out the plan collaboratively is really what eState's about. And so if you want to learn how to do that or practice, or we can show you how I do it, live with the client, watching, dragging assets around, making cash gifts and all of those things, it's really a powerful experience for them. So I don't know if anybody does it that way, but if you don't, that was the idea behind it. And I can tell you that the clients eat this up. So that's what I want to say about absolute cash legacies. Anybody have any questions about how to, about that or any other topic about eState? Nope. All right. Great. Anybody need help setting up their precedents? Anybody need, some help with gifts or anything like that? Feel free to unmute and or type it in chat or whatever. Oh, here we go. Loyalty points. They don't want me to pay to investigate whether they can be transferred. eState provides a bequest for certain to specific which money is required by providers. Hull and Hull blog that highlights Aeroplan cannot be transferred. Right. So there's all that stuff. What do you advise clients dealing with loyalty points? Yeah, the question is, loyalty points are, I mean, again, if you don't want, I'd just send the client, you go check, if you have that many loyalty points, and you want them to go to someone other than, the residuary beneficiary, put them in. I know some plans have it, some plans don't. I usually leave it to the client to deal with that. Jordy, is there anything in the works to force clients to complete the intake questionnaire? Well, what we're doing is actually, and we've been on this project for a while, but we're revamping the whole questionnaire to make it much easier and to prompt clients and to allow you to customize the questions, or at least which of the questions you want to ask them. Maybe, sometimes it can be overwhelming. We're coming up with a process which we expect won't be overwhelming, which really is a way of figuring out, okay, do they have a complicated family or do they have a simple family? If it's simple, great. It should be, these questions. If it's more complicated, we need to go further. But trying to build it using artificial intelligence and other tools to make it, easier for the client and gather the information we want. If we could solve the problem of clients filling in the questionnaire, I'd be very happy for sure. But yes.
Jordy, it's James.
Hey, James.
How are you doing today?
I'm well, thanks.
Good. So my question is, do you have any vignette educational videos that would be to help them to walk through the onboarding? I know we've got the document which will explain, but obviously having a visual at the same time that's not very long, I think would be helpful. But I don't know if we have anything. So
we're building in. We've built in something called Chameleon into our apps. Right now, it's the main app. It's for a lawyer side, but it's really a walkthrough and a live help for the client to walk through the questionnaire. So that's part of our revamp. So we're hoping that that's going to make things easier, as well as explaining. I think sometimes clients don't know why we're asking information, and they think it's just more information that we don't need, and so they're going to ignore it. if they had a better understanding of, oh, we noticed that this is missing, we need to know this, and this is why, that would also help a great deal. So we're working hard on that. So yeah, we think the questionnaire is really a fundamental piece of eState, and it needs to get better.
So you're making it interactive then,
Correct.
is
Yeah.
basically. So it's the testator wears no clothes. Give us everything.
Right. Well, at least why we need it. And so, then at least when you ask them for that information, they know why. Yeah. So, Tom, great question. The question is, you've got a client who's expecting to get inherited property, be it assets or shares in a corporation or anything. What do you recommend? So, what I would do in that situation is, there's two things. Whenever we're trying to crystal ball, it's a problem. But we can put in a placeholder, and we have an asset called inherited assets. But what I would do is, for example, it all comes down to the definition, right? So you can take that inherited asset, and often they want to, let's say, give it directly to the kids or in a spousal trust rather than giving it absolutely to the spouse. And so really it comes down to the definition and how you defined it. And I've just been actually doing it. I had a file recently about that. And so I had to define inherited assets. Now, it's the problem, and the warning you have to give your clients, of course, is, listen, I don't know how this definition is going to work. Yes, it covers assets that have been inherited, but what about tracing it? And what about income from it? And what about all of those things? And so the definition, to the best of our ability, we do it. But then I say to the client, listen, this is one of those wills. When you inherit money, you got to come back and we got to look at this and make sure this makes sense, because there's all kinds of things that can happen with inherited money. They buy a different asset, they've invested in a piece of real estate that they co-own, and it becomes a real problem. And so, when you know the asset itself, for example, land or shares in a private company that you're going to inherit, that's a little bit easier, because then you can at least identify it in some way. But then, of course, those shares get rolled over and sold, and now there's cash, and it's in a GIC, and it's all those things. So there's only so much we can do there. But I would say to them, here's the best I can do right now. But and I would report that out. But I'm warning you, when you actually get your hands on these assets, let's have another meeting and review the definition and talk about what you should do with it. Because a lot of it, as well as what does the client end up doing with those assets. It's like giving a bank account away. I'm never a big fan of that, because who knows what's going to be in that bank account, if it's going to exist. What about tracing? What was the intention? All of those things. So those are tricky things. But yes, you know what? We'll do a Thursday webinar on inherited assets that aren't yet inherited, and how to plan for that. I don't think I have the answer. Maybe someone else does, but those are my thoughts anyway. Another message. Here we go. Sorry. When a client does the intake questionnaire, is he or she creating a unique username and password? No problem. So yeah, so what happens is, when you send out the questionnaire, they have to set their own password, log in with their email, and set their password. And so it's a unique that only they know. There's no, it's secure as anything else is, in the sense that you've got, I think we require an 8 character password for them, etc. You can as well, and I'll show you this. You can, if you've given access to a questionnaire to a client, and the client has filled it in, and you want to sort of stop them from making any further changes or whatever, all you have to do in that case is uncheck the questionnaire. I'm trying to find out here. Let's take this guy. And here you can see, so this person has access to their questionnaire. They can log in and out, but again, they know the password. I don't know their password. I can lock them out of the questionnaire by unclicking this use questionnaire button. And now, even if they tried to log in, they can't. So that's something that you can do as well. But yes, they have to create their own password. Does that answer the question sufficiently? Hope so. Yeah, great. Yeah, and you know what? I've had varying success with questionnaires, paper questionnaires or digital questionnaires or whatever questionnaires. You get some clients who they go over everything and they give you all kinds of information you never even wanted, and then you have others who they put in that they have 3 kids and they don't put in their names, and it makes you crazy. And so, just one little tidbit that I've started to do is I have my clerk, the few days before the meeting, look at eState, see if the client has completed the questionnaire, which we get notice of course, but go into the questionnaire and see what kind of information there is. And if the client hasn't filled in the information that we need, like, are there children, they have no assets or whatever, then I have my clerk reach out to them and say, let's just take that information off. Like, if you don't want to do it online, then great, we'll do it on the phone and they'll take down that information, whatever. It's not the greatest process, but at least we have the information before we start the meeting, which not having that information before the meeting is extremely wasteful in time. For me, some people like to gather all that information in the client meeting, and that's fine too. But for me, I find it a waste of time. So that's that. Well, great. Well, thanks everybody. Appreciate everybody being here. This Thursday is an interesting webinar. We're talking about releases for beneficiaries on an estate administration, and there's some new case law about them, and just best practices for getting releases and those kinds of things. So we're updating that whole issue and looking at some of the new case law that came out just a few months ago. So hope you guys can join us, and hope to see you again next Tuesday. We'll do this again. And yeah, if you've got a particular question or anything, feel free to reach out, and always feel free to use the question mark. And thanks for the feedback, guys. I love it. And they're all great. So really appreciate it. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Take care.